Hi, my name is Dexter, and this is Dexter's Bridge Show. Now, tales of love gone wrong and domestic issues have been awash in the news lately, and we've heard from the very crazy to unfortunate situations where people actually lose their lives. And the question is, what went wrong? What should have been done? Who should have moved? Who should have stayed? And these should I, could I, would have just been here every time now and then. Today I'm joined with somebody who has been through that road, survived, and is here to tell her story. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an intriguing story, and I'm joined by Pet Nora Kano. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, sir.
Okay. When my producers told me about your story and gave me excerpt from the story, the first thing that kept bugging my mind was, were there red flags? Did you not see any sign?
In my own case, though, there were red flags, but I think I was too young, or should I say naive, to understand what those signs were. I wasn't really grown. I was still very young.
Okay.
I think I was about 21 when I got involved with him. So the red flags, I think now I can actually pinpoint the red flags.
In hindsight.
Yes,
Okay.
the red flags I didn't know were red flags then.
Oh. Was that your first shot at falling in love, being in a relationship?
Not really. I've been in a relationship before him.
Okay.
But the fact that he was a husband.
Okay, was a different ball game altogether.
Yeah, you know
the boyfriend thing, lover,
you know how
puppy
your
love.
parents would always tell you that this is marriage. It's not like your normal boyfriend and girlfriend or relationship.
Okay.
So I just felt like everything I was meant as a woman, I just felt I was built to tolerate those things you might see as red flags.
You thought as a woman you were built to tolerate
them, yes.
Things that should have been red flags.
Yes. Because, Africa generally, the African mothers would always want you to remain married, no matter what you tell them. So by the time you start seeing those red flags, they will just conclude that, please, you don't want to be married. So you just keep those things. You try to, build your life around the red flags until you're wiser and informed.
So you were taught to conform to absurdities.
Yes.
And make them your normal.
Yes. Because they will always use those marriage is not a bed of roses phrase for you. If you complain to anybody, they will tell you, please bear it. It's not sweet anywhere. Marriage is not a bed of roses and all of that. Not until I realized that even though marriage is not a bed of roses, it shouldn't be a bed of thorns either.
Okay, guys, this is going to be both a bumpy and adventurous ride. Yes, because we're going to be facing issues head on. Now, how did you meet him?
Okay.
Because the truth is that no guy comes with masquerades. No guy comes with masquerade. There's always a love path. There's always a tale of love at the beginning. So how did you meet him?
Okay, I think this is the very first time I'm revealing this. We actually started talking. He said he knew me. You know, like I was this promising young girl in his community.
Okay.
So he said he asked questions about me and he contacted me on Facebook.
Okay.
Yes. So I would say we met on Facebook.
Okay, initially, then how did you get to offline and then eventual
Then we started talking and, it was smooth and the whole relationship kicked off until he came to Nigeria and...
Okay, he wasn't domiciled in Nigeria at the time?
No, he never lived in Nigeria.
Okay.
From the time I met him,
he
has always lived abroad.
Okay. Then how did the marriage contract process,
Okay, we got married traditionally and we were supposed to have a white wedding.
Okay.
Before the the white man's wedding.
Okay.
Before the whole marital issues started coming up.
Okay, so you were still planning to have another ceremony
course.
before
Yes.
you started having the first episodes of your
Of
marital
course, yes.
issues.
Yes.
So how did it happen? What was the first ugly episode, really?
Okay. When he eventually came around, the time where we were about to start planning the white wedding,
Okay.
we were married already.
Okay.
So I became pregnant for my son.
Okay.
So in the process, I think that was the first time I was getting to spend time with him.
With him.
And because of the whole hormonal changes and pregnancy symptoms and all of that, a lot. I think I was sick for a long time during his stay. I didn't even know I was pregnant because I didn't know I was even ready to be pregnant.
Okay.
So
was there a bill that's supposed to go bagam?
I didn't know that just one touch could make you pregnant.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
So yeah, I was pregnant and I started noticing his funny characters while the baby was growing. Even before he left. Because when he came, I became pregnant. He left. He didn't come back until my son was 9 months old.
Okay, in all fairness, I mean, most guys, most young men, when they're married for the first time and then their wives, their new wives are pregnant, and the whole hormonal changes and eventual emotional topsy-turvy that follow, they can be put off. So you say, is there putting off strange behaviors? When you say, was there active violence at this point?
I think the problem basically was the external forces.
Okay,
You know,
you feel there were external influences?
Yes, there were so many of them. I don't feel, I know.
Okay, you are certain there were
Yes,
external influences?
Yes, I did my findings much
Okay.
later. And, I realized that he was being, I don't know if I should use the word manipulated. So he was being
Maybe let's say influenced.
influenced,
Okay.
or so to say. I found out I was pregnant as a result of the violence. At that point when
You mean physical violence?
yes, like a push, a kick, and all of that. So when I found out, we had an issue the morning before I found out I was pregnant.
Okay.
So, but when I told him I was pregnant, he held himself a little bit. I think he regretted his actions at that point. Then he left. He left back to Europe, leaving me here in Nigeria to, take care
To
of my
nurse the pregnancy.
Yes.
Okay, so before he traveled initially, the violence or the episode of violence happened once, you would say?
The main hit was once.
Okay, once.
Yes.
Then he now traveled and you had a
He
baby?
traveled, yes.
Okay.
That was why I said they were like external forces or external influence. Because, okay, let me just be specific.
Yeah.
There was a morning he got a call from somebody. I wouldn't want to mention the person's name, but I know the person. So I don't know what the person told him. I don't know what must have happened on the other side of the phone, but he just attacked. He pounced on me and I fell. So when I woke up some minutes a few minutes later, I was bleeding. So I went
At this point, you were pregnant?
I didn't know I was pregnant.
Okay.
Because when he came to Nigeria that year, I got pregnant. I went to Lagos to welcome him. This is my husband coming back to Nigeria. So I was in Lagos. That was where I became pregnant. So from when I became pregnant, I didn't even know until the time I found out. We had a series of arguments. But the first time he laid his hands on me, I passed out. That was when I realized I was pregnant.
Okay.
And I went for a test, confirming I was pregnant. I kept it to myself because at that point I was scared. Like, this is something I have never seen my dad do to my mom. And being pregnant for this kind of person that could hit me this hard, at that point I didn't know how to,
Did you tell your parents about this violence episode?
I told them.
And what did they
My
say?
parents were aware. My dad, my dad stood by me completely. Not like my mom didn't stand by me, but my mom is a typical African Christian mother. She was praying every time, and I think that was because as at that point, I was the only person that was married in my house. And I had like so many sisters, so many single sisters. So my mom's concern, and apart from that, my mom feels I am over pampered by my dad because I am my dad's favorite. I am pet. So she feels, if you stay husband house, you didn't say easy, your daddy they spoil you, So that was her own
ideology or opinion.
So, but my dad is somebody I talk to. So from the first day I saw my husband, the whole arguments, the whole staying in Lagos before coming back to Delta State, I was carrying my dad along. So my dad knew somehow that
this wasn't
working.
This wasn't working.
Yes, but my mom was pushing, praying, don't leave him. Or if I threaten to leave him, don't leave him. Or your sisters are single, who will marry them, blah, blah, blah. So they knew about it.
So it's like saying, I'm trying, this is a very delicate topic that we are handling today. And so I'm trying to be very careful. But it's somewhere between being selfish and being overly careful. On one hand, your mother was probably being selfish, was trying to protect her reputation. On the other hand, this is my opinion, my thinking, she was trying to push you a little further to see if you could get used and stay in the husband's house.
In all fairness to my mom, I wouldn't want to use the word selfish.
Okay.
Because if I say she's selfish, then every African mother out there is selfish. That's the truth.
And maybe it's not far from the truth.
Yes, because that is what they think marriage is. Do you understand? That is what they were taught about marriage. They weren't taught that they don't believe you can work out. They will always give you instances. Your dad too, are the manager. It's not easy. They don't believe there is a perfect marriage, a perfect husband. Because that's what was inculcated in them.
Guys, see, there are many things that we're going to take away from this show. One of them is that we have to draw a line between the inherent imperfection in man, I mean the human race, and total character irresponsibility. There has to be a demarcation. Yes, we all hear things like, nobody's perfect, we're all work in progress. Yes, we understand that. There's no perfection trapped in the human nature. But that analogy has been taken too far. What is the demarcation between the inherent imperfection in the human race and character flaws? We have to take that away. So aside this, okay, you said after the first episode of violence, he left and went back to Europe. Yes. So what happened next?
At that point, I was building a house for him.
Okay.
So immediately I gave birth. I had my baby in December. I moved into our home in February the next year. So he came somewhere around middle of the year, the next year. My baby was about 9 months old.
When he came back?
Almost at the ending of the year, he came, yes. And that was the first time he was seeing the house and the baby.
And the baby. So was he excited?
Yes, he was very excited. He was so proud of me.
Of course, being a virtuous woman, having managed resources, built a house for him, and all that. And now you had a child, you had nursed the child for 9 months. And so wasn't these achievements enough to have made him change? Did the violence continue?
It did. It did. When he came and saw the baby and the house, were cool, but I actually can't tell where the violence, what's actually triggers the violence. But that's why I talked about the external forces, external influence. Because
so it's like nothing going wrong, everything going well, no trigger, nothing that he's complaining about, and then he just flips.
No, he just keeps saying, they told me, I heard, they said, they said was just too much.
And guys, there's actually a case I'm handling as we speak. A young man who seems to be doing well and all that stuff. And the wife is a virtuous wife, doing everything right. I mean, ticking all the boxes that a wife should tick. And it just happens, flip. And he just goes berserk. So, and I ask, don't we think we should start querying mental health issues? In hindsight, do you think there could have been a mental health issue? You can't say.
I'm not a psychiatric doctor, I wouldn't know that. But sometimes the behaviors I see, I don't just feel it's normal. That's the reason I prayed every time I saw him act in a certain kind of way.
Guys, you're still on to the Dexter Bridge Show, and the story is getting interesting. We'll be back after this break. Thanks for staying tuned. You're still on to the Dexter's Bridge Show, and before the break, we've been talking with Pet Nora, and she's one of the very few people who experienced domestic violence at a very significant level and survived. Aside the first episode of being pushed down before you said your ex-husband traveled abroad, what other active scenarios of violence can you recall? I mean, like real physical violence.
I think the most painful one I can actually recall is when I lost my babies in 2015.
Wait, you lost your babies how?
I was pregnant for a set of twins, and we got into a heated argument, and we fought. We fought to the extent that my cousin, who was coming from Agbo to Asaba, got into Asaba, met us still fighting.
Was he aware you were pregnant, your ex-husband?
Of course he was. Of course, that particular day, I was ready to die because I had had it up to here. I couldn't take it again. So I just felt, okay, it is what it is. If I die, fine. Since I can't talk to anybody about this whole thing, I am labeled the aggressive one because I am social, I am outspoken, I am out there.
The stereotypes.
You know,
when a young lady is sociable, yes, and all gregarious.
So you're tagged all kind of names, and at that point, nobody's ready to stand by you. So I just felt, okay, this is my fight, and we fought.
And in the process?
Nothing really happened in the process. It was like few days later, I started bleeding.
So was there a medical link between the eventual loss of the pregnancy and the fight you had?
So the whole fight made me start bleeding after some time. Okay. Even before the week where the bleeding became very intense, I was spotting.
Okay.
So somebody directed me to another doctor of Jesus Saves, one doctor around Jesus Saves. So when I got there, he gave me, I don't know, some injection to sleep off. So I told him I would prefer to go home. I would prefer to sleep at home.
Bed rest or something.
He said, exactly in his words, he said I needed a bed rest. So I went home. But from the time he gave me that injection till the next morning, I was like almost dying. So my friends came. My mom was alive then. My friends came. I was just blaming my mom. Sure, you see, I have told you I don't want to stay. You want me to? She said, don't worry, you'll be fine, blah, 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 because she visited me that period. As at this point, he had gone back to Europe.
So it's like a hit and run thing?
Yeah, whenever he comes to Nigeria, he would always have issues, and he would just leave me and go back. In his words, once I'm pregnant, say, okay, you are pregnant, I have to go. So I think that was, I don't know, maybe he just wanted me to just...
Did you ever consider the option of relocating to Europe with him?
Yes, we did.
So?
Okay, there was a time I gained admission through his link, but I don't know what happened between him and the people. They refused to alert me about the admission, forgetting that my email address was used for the admission process. I already got the notification for me to, go to the embassies.
So with all this going on, and you were apparently at the point where your life was threatened, and your parents, for some reasons, didn't want you to leave the marriage, did you seek help from another source?
I didn't really know what to do. I was not informed. I didn't know I could do, probably go to women affairs, or I was just concentrating on making the marriage work. I was just probably feeling that someday I'll get used to these abuses. And
What about his family?
his family, I know they never liked me. I don't know what their reasons were. I don't know.
You know or you think?
I know. I lived with them. I lived with their father. I took care of their father.
This might just be your opinion, you know.
They say it to my face.
Guys, we are seeing a pattern here. Something happens when a lady, particularly, yes, this is not a stereotype, men to go through domestic abuses. But in this case, we're talking about a lady who survived domestic abuse. Something happens. When a woman starts going through abuse in her home, the first thing that happens is that she becomes isolated, either by her own doing or by some kind of gang up or coincidences. She becomes isolated. Then she's numb and she starts backtracking on life itself. Then she doesn't know who to talk to. That's what happens. So you are now in that world where you are dying and yet you can't talk to anybody.
True.
That was your case. And you know, the devil is a master trickster. The first sign or the first strategy he puts out there is to isolate you. Before he kills, he isolates. Man was created to live in communities, different kinds of communities. No one relationship in life is more important than the other. Okay, some are more important than the others, but you can't live with just one relationship.
I think there is this, the people feel that when you're married to a guy living abroad, you're made.
Gold mine.
Yes, you don't have a problem. You don't even need to complain. You dey enjoy now.
It's poverty bias.
So
it's poverty bias, really. Because to the average Nigerian or African, I mean, we are biased towards poverty and the longing to walk out of it. So any leeway out of poverty should be held, even if it costs you your life.
True.
and biblically speaking, there are many covenants in life. But the most important covenant in life is the covenant of life itself. So anything that threatens life itself should be let go.
True.
Yes, we want to survive, want to make money, want to have love and loyalty and brotherhood and other things that are different covenants. But the covenant of life itself supersedes every other covenant. So you are holding on to somebody who is a ticket to your survival or to your next level, and he wants to take life out of you.
True.
Job said, if a man dies, shall he live?
No.
So you see, that's a funny thing. So at what point, Nora, did you think you couldn't do this anymore?
At the point where I lost my kids and I was heartbroken, after I lost my babies, I became very sick. My womb was, I don't know what happened actually, but I kept bleeding for a while. You know, and at the
After the
point,
evacuation,
yes, after
you
the
still
evacuation.
continued bleeding?
Yes, I had pains all over. My tummy was getting swollen, you know. Sometimes I would just feel pains. And so one day I called him and I just wanted to talk to him, you know. I told him I was tired, that I needed to call it quits. Then he just laughed and said, I beg you, see you want come out for marriage. You think say anything dey street. They never marry people wey get flat tummy. Can't be you wey carry big belly. I just felt bad. You know, and I'm like, when you got married to me, I didn't have this kind of tummy. It was as a result of your kids. He said, but forget, you think say easy. Young girls full street. They never see husband. You know, I started healing. I took my son away from me because I didn't want him to see me. I didn't know the decision to take at that point. I would sometimes lock myself in the room. For like 4 days, I won't come outside. I won't eat, I won't drink. I just kept to myself, you know. So I was very sick. I didn't tell anybody. The only person I told was my uncle's wife, who was the chief matron, and she advised me to go for scan. But at that point, my fear is because before the evacuation, my mom was crying before they took me into the theater. So I didn't know what happened, but I just felt they had removed my womb or something. Because after the evacuation, I can't even undress where people are. I was having awful smell. So I just felt, okay, if I have this kind of awful smell, I should just stick to taking antibiotics. Maybe I still have sore somewhere around me. I was just healing alone. I didn't want anybody around me because at that point, I just felt worthless because there is nothing I will tell you that you will understand. So I just kept to myself. So in the process, I lost my mom.
While these were going on?
Yes, I lost my mom in 2016. After my mom's burial, I called my elder sister and told her she needed to go with my son to Lagos. So she didn't hesitate. But
because
she didn't know why.
Your son was now becoming dysfunctional. I mean, this was taking a toll on
my son actually went through therapy in Lagos because he witnessed some of these hits. There was this particular incident when he came back. I was pregnant for my twins. I wasn't
heavy,
okay.
Yeah.
So he came in. He misbehaved actually. He went to somewhere in Ogwashuku to look for one girl and had an accident there. So my mom, normal, typical African woman, and how can your husband have an accident and you don't even want to get to the accident scene and all of that? So I followed them to Ogwashuku. When we got there, a young lady, rickety, raggedy looking young girl, was walking beside him, calling him baby. I'm like I was heartbroken. Because when he had the accident at midnight, he called me and said he had an accident. I was scared. Then when he got back, he said, thank God, say, I not go find girl.
Okay, this is what he said to you when he came back?
Say, yeah, if thank God, say, not be girl, I go find her. At that point, I didn't really want to know if you went to look for a girl or anything. I was just concerned that you're back home. So I made warm tea for him. I brought a bunny key. I massaged all his body. And we slept. So the next morning, I think he didn't see it coming. He didn't know I was going to follow him to the accident scene. So when they towed the vehicle to the mechanic, I came back home. I was still very angry.
After you had witnessed what transpired between him and the young lady?
Yeah, and his friend.
Okay.
So I got home, had my bath. I had my son, and I was trying to play with him with his iPad when he came back. This attack is the best form of defense has always been, I think it's men's thing. I don't know. So he came in and he was banging on the gates. Open this door. I said, hold on. They are looking for the key. He said, you want to lock me outside my house? I was irritated, like, what's wrong with
having
you?
witnessed what happened.
Yes. Instead of you to come back calm and just come in and let's sort things out, you're shouting from outside the gate. So when they opened the gates for him, I think that I actually blame myself till now for taking that action. Maybe I wouldn't have lost my kids. So when he was about to walk past me, I just hissed. I'm like, The next thing I heard was a slap on my face.
And your son was observing this?
Yeah, he was right there beside me.
What was his reaction?
He just started shouting, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, daddy." I wasn't even looking at him because I was furious. So immediately he slapped me, I just pounced on him and we started fighting. He pushed my son out of his way and he fell somewhere. It was later my help started telling me that daddy flung my son out of the way so he could reach out to me. So that was the fight that led to me losing my twins. Yes.
Pregnancy.
And then another incident that my son witnessed was when we were coming back from somewhere in Agbo, so we're coming back to Asaba. So there is this cousin of mine that has 3 baby girls. No, 2 as at then. So these kids were very close to my son. They are still very close to my son. They are like his cousins. So we're bringing the kids to my house for holidays, and my son wasn't aware of it. So we just said we wanted to surprise him with, the kids. And we got to somewhere around Okpanam Road, that time before Eagle Square, somewhere around Okpanam Road. And I think my phone rang. It was my cousin who was trying to call me to know if we've gotten home. And I think he misunderstood the call or something. And I just smiled, and he said, who is calling you that you're smiling like this? I was the one driving. So I just said, I beg, leave me, Jerry. He said, I'm asking you a question and you're telling me to leave you? Who they call you? So he heard the stereo. And, you know, then they were constructing Okpanam Road. Then we fell off the road and the car was just like this.
This was while you were driving?
I was the one driving, you know. So the kids were in the vehicle
in
with
the
us.
car
We were driving down to Asaba, you know. So the kids, they started shouting. It was as if the car wanted to tumble or something. The two tires by this side was just hanging like already, this. Yeah, so many people ran to us. I was just shaking. I was just scared. I said, not now, please. But he just came down and slammed the door. So my cousin's kids.
And you were pregnant at this point?
No, this was another incident. Okay, I had already lost the baby.
Okay.
He had gone back and come back. He came back this time for his father's burial in 2016 after my mom's burial. So the kids were shouting. I always throw light on these two incidents because the kids still remember that incident vividly. So they were crying, mommy, 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 please, what happened? Are we going to die? I said, just don't worry. I was shaking, you know. So some guys came and they helped us push the vehicle.
At this point, he had exited the car.
He came down and left us in the car now. So when they stabilized the car, he got back inside and I drove home. I was crying, I was shaking. So when we got home, my immediate elder sister brought her fiance home to show me. They visited Asaba. I think they were lodged somewhere around my house, but they heard we were coming because we were talking on the phone. So they were in the house. So they witnessed this particular incident too. So when we got home, I was really in pain, you know. So I was bringing down stuffs from the car. I don't know, I think my son's boss, his favorite boss was in the car. So as I was just bringing down stuffs, my sister ran to me because nobody knew what happened, but the kids were still shivering. They were still in shock. So because before then I called my son and said, we have a surprise for you. So that was excited. My pain. Because if I hadn't called him to make him expect something, and it turned out to be a bloody surprise, maybe he wouldn't have maybe he would have forgotten by now. So because I called him to say, I have a surprise for you, which were the cousins. So when we got into the compound and he didn't even stop, the kids came down and they were shaking. My son ran towards us, heard his cousin, mommy, I saw the surprise. Wow, they came. You know, I didn't talk. I was just bringing out stuff from the trunk. I was still shaking. Then the next thing, he came to where I was and, you know, started fighting me. He took my son's favorite box and slammed it on my head. The box, you know, those plastic, beautiful cartoon character boxes. So the box scattered and my son was crying. My sister was begging him. My sister's boyfriend then was begging him. Neighbors came. All my neighbors then, they still call me to check up on me till date. You know, so that incident was the last stroke that broke the
That's when you decided you were done.
Yes, so I took my son away from me so I could probably think of an escape route or re-strategize or do something about my life. Because at that point I knew I had made a terrible mistake, you know. So when my son went to stay with my eldest sister, who is a pastor in Lagos, she really helped me. My sister one day called me and said she needed me to come to Lagos. I was scared because she had gone with my son for a long time. I was depressed. I was going through a lot alone. So that fateful day, my elder sister sent me a clip. And when I downloaded the clip, I wept profusely because that was my son narrating the whole ordeal to my elder sister.
Okay, so your son had opened up to them?
Yes, because the first time my son got to Lagos, my elder sister would call me subsequently to complain about his character. I don't like what he's doing. If I'm trying to maybe argue with somebody, he will rush inside and rush in between and start saying, no, don't hit, don't touch you. No, I don't want them to touch you.
That's more like PTSD.
He was traumatized.
Yes, PTSD.
Yes, he had post-traumatic.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening
yes.
to the small boy.
Yes, at that point. So my sister was like, what kind of environment did you raise this boy? He was barely 4 then. He was just 4. So I would just cover up. I beg, leave this boy, Jerry. It's like he's watching too much movie and all of that. So, but that particular day, my elder sister sat him down and took out her time to really interrogate him. So he was scared to even open up. I still have the video till date, So he was trying to explain to my elder sister how daddy would come inside and carry a knife, how mommy will carry another knife. So he grew up
witnessing the whole madness.
Witnessing the whole abuse and everything, which really traumatized him. So at that point, my son, throughout his stay with my sister, never argued with anybody. He never fought in
because
class.
To him, argument will result
yes,
in something crazy.
He didn't like that kind of violence at all. If he see 2 people getting into a heated or suspected heated argument, he would just start crying. He would start shaking. So it took my sister time to,
Did he visit
I
a therapist?
think my sister got a therapist for my son. Because at that point, she took it upon herself. She just let me be. When she sent me the clip, she invited me to Lagos. So I got to Lagos that day, and she sat me down. She's a pastor. She spoke to me, brought out the Bible, showed me different verses, we prayed, and she said I should just open up and tell her the truth. So I wept. I told her everything. Then she brought out somewhere in the Bible where it said, God hates divorce. I just laughed. I was crying and laughing at the same time. She was like, why are you laughing? You think it's a joke? This is the Bible. You have to find it. I said, if that is the case, that means God hates me. Because at this point, I have made up my mind to go for a divorce. Yeah. So I now asked her one question. I said, at one point, did God say you can leave
a marriage?
A marriage. She now, I'm not very conversant with the Bible, but she said, when your life
is threatened.
Yes, when your life is at stake. I'm like, okay, thank God I have now, I can leave. And before then, my dad was very sick. I went to my dad and I explained to my dad what has been going on. And my dad was like, right from time I knew this wasn't going to work. If at this point you want to leave, I'll give you my full support. I felt light. For the first time in my life, somebody is saying, I understand your pain, And after my dad's burial, I called it quits.
You see, guys, most times we're in a place where we become victims of our own compassion. Exactly what happened to you. You became a victim of your own compassion, so you became immobilized even when your life was at stake. You were immobilized. You stayed because something inside of you wanted you to be compassionate, to do more. We'll be back after this break. Don't go away. Thank you for staying with us. And at this point, I can see you guys practically dabbing the tears from your eyes from this very horrific story. And thank you once again, Pet Nora, for being this open. Now you decided to leave the marriage and all that followed. How did you heal? Because I think it's after leaving the marriage that the weight of what you've gone through dawned on you. So how did your journey to healing start?
What really made me snap out quickly was the fact that I always told myself that you only live once, which was how my NGO was bettered. I would always hashtag you only live once, YOLO, YOLO, YOLO. Even before I started YOLO, people who knew me knew that hashtag. I felt I needed to love myself more. I started reading a lot of books. I started, thinking of people who were also going through what I am going through, who might not be strong enough to live
make
like
the
I
move.
left.
Yes, yes.
You know,
Yes.
living a house, luxury and all of that, to the streets without any expectations. So I just started reading, I started praying, I drew closer to God. That is basically how my healing started. I drew closer to God. I was, you know, praying for mercy, praying for grace
Mercy.
to carry on. Yes.
Mercy. You know, I am a huge believer in the concept of mercy. The truth is that there's always the part that is our mistake.
True.
Yes. It might not be active commission, but omission, like God asked Job. You know, Job came before God after his whole ordeal, and God pointed his ignorance. And in God, ignorance is unrighteousness. It's called the sin of omission. So there's always that place of ignorance. So it's profound that you ask God for mercy.
Yeah.
And you found love.
Yes, I did find love.
Let me ask you this question. It's a delicate one. Were you just on a rebound just to get along, or you really found love?
Okay.
Or love found you? Which one?
I found love.
Okay.
Because
Guys, Petnora is married again. She's remarried. Now, so tell us about your new husband and how did you meet him?
I met him somewhere in Lagos.
Okay.
Just at the peak of my I had already gotten a lawyer. I had already made up my mind to do the proper divorce, take the proper divorce steps when I met him. Yes.
So, did he know about your story? He knows, does he know everything about your past and all that?
Yeah, of course. I didn't hide anything because I actually don't like being haunted. I wouldn't want to be sleeping and jumping up to something that must have happened and I didn't say it, or something. I wouldn't want my past to haunt me. I needed to start on a very clean plate.
So you gave him 100%
yes.
disclosure.
So I told him everything. And at that point, I didn't tell him because I wanted pity or
Sympathy,
something. I just
okay.
wanted him to, at least this is the kind of lady you're
dealing with.
You're dealing
so
with.
know the baggage, know what you are going
Yes.
into, and all the stuff.
The first time we actually met, his friend, who was our mutual friend,
Okay.
told him I was married, and he almost absconded. He was so scared because at that point I was already processing my divorce, but I didn't tell anybody. I was just doing it low key because at that point I didn't want anybody to tell me, give him a little time, hold on a little, because it was 7 years.
Petnora, thinking very critically now, would you say in any way that your past or any of the hurt you went through is having any negative impact on your current marriage, at least from your own perspective?
I maybe reflex. Sometimes I overreact.
And your project, YOLO, tell us about it. What's the message behind that project?
Okay, during my healing process, when I started going online, reading books, checking out some white ladies who were divorced, I realized that so many African women, so many Nigerian women needs a platform to express themselves. They need to be re-educated about marriage, and they need to be given a chance to voice out whatever they are going through. So I spoke to, after my wedding with my husband, he asked me what I wanted to do. I said, I don't want to do anything. I just want to help people who are going through what I've been through. People who, because of stereotype, are being labeled what they are not. People because of their dressing, because of the way they look, are being labeled who they are not.
Yes.
So I want to stand in the gap to, help them survive or possibly avoid domestic violence. Because I actually learned a lot during this whole divorce process that, like, I agreed to hissing, which was really not a good attitude towards your husband, probably because I was angry.
But the response to hissing should not be hitting.
Yes, but you know, I
You
try
don't
to
hit
balance. I try
somebody
to balance it
because they hiss.
I don't want people to see me like I am supporting women to disrespect
Like a
their
bitter
husband.
person,
No,
yeah.
I am trying to balance it because, like I said, I still regret hissing because if I hadn't hissed, probably he wouldn't have slapped. Do you understand?
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. The truth is that you must sacrifice yourself. Like I said, you don't become a victim of your own sympathy.
I can actually live quietly without the whole...
No. See, listen. I think it was Abiola, the late MKO, that said that we want peace, but we don't want the peace of the graveyard. Because in the graveyard, just because everybody's dead, we think they're all resting in peace. No, they are dead for God's sake. We want peace, but we don't want people to be dead to think they are at peace. So spouses have conflicts. I mean, your wife is not your son, your daughter. She's your partner. You people will have conflict, disagreement. She's not a slave or a prisoner. She has opinions. She can be angry and let it out. We are imperfect. We can disagree and even argue. You don't hit somebody because you disagreed, because they said something unkind to you. We're all evolving. Somehow we are growing. We have our own baggages we're bringing to the table. And biblically speaking, marriage is a therapy session, not a camp for badly raised people, but a therapy session. So a lady who is imperfect in certain ways brings her imperfection to you, and you're helping her. Jesus said that, or the Bible says, you should bear each other's burdens. So she brings a burden, you're helping her bear. He brings a burden, you're helping him bear, but not your badly raised tendencies. So I mean, yes, you were angry, you reacted, but it's not in any way a passport for somebody to hit you and knock you out to a point where you lose a pregnancy. No, it's like killing an ant with a sledgehammer.
Okay, the truth is I'm actually enjoying you explain this to everybody.
Definitely.
I prefer you doing this explanation.
Definitely.
Because I am the founder of YOLO Charity Foundation. Yes. I wouldn't want you to see it like I am supporting them. I am trying to, be a little more subtle.
See, guys, I get what you're trying to do. I get all that. I'm going to put out a video about divorce. Yes, I'm going to put out a very audacious video about divorce. I've done very robust research about what the Bible says about divorce from the Old Testament to the New Testament. I'll put out that video sometime next week or thereabout. I'm not promising I'll put out that video. But let me give you this thing. If you're a young lady and you're dating a man and he slaps you once,
run.
Break the relationship.
Japa.
Number one, you're dating a lady or a guy and he slaps you once, break the relationship.
They never stop.
That's number one. Number two, if he becomes verbally abusive and insulting and you warn him and he doesn't stop, break the relationship. Number two. Number three, if somebody claims they have changed, don't take their words. They must show patterns. Then they must have somebody they are accountable to. They must show accountability. It's only monsters that are headless. That a man is the head of his home doesn't mean he doesn't have anybody he's accountable to. In the graph, the biblical graph or organogram of marriage, God is the head of Christ, Christ the head of the man the head of the wife. So a man is not a headless being. He must have somebody he defers to, both in Christ and in a physical person. So as a woman, you must have a man that your husband is accountable to. He has to be there. So he must show accountability. And if he claims to have changed, if he has made mistakes, he must show patterns. Number four, I am in support of separation. You must separate and heal. If there is misbehavior that degenerates to violence, you can separate, especially when it becomes life-threatening. You must separate. Let him or her, because violence is not an exclusive of the men against the women. Yes, separate. Let the other person go seek help. Like I would counsel, if your husband, especially in this case, shows multiple occasions of violence, we must check him out. We must check his head. Yes, we must check his head. Because nobody in the right senses want to kill somebody. They are either sick or traumatized. And they must, just the way malaria needs to take medication. Mental health is real. You can go to the hospital, get healed, and come back. But you can't keep sick people in marriages when you kill somebody else. Like saying somebody is drunk and they are driving, they'll kill somebody on the road. True. So someone who has a mental health problem, bipolar, schizophrenic, any other mental health problem, depression, let them go and seek help. We must open this, and we can add it to our boxes of premarital issues. People should go and get themselves checked. That might sound extreme, but at least let them go and do some kind of toxicology. Is this guy high on something? Is this girl an addict? Does she smoke or drink something? We mustn't be building an asylum for mad people in marriages. We shouldn't. I'm not calling anybody mad, but certain actions are apparent somebody is not doing well. We mustn't. So people must take responsibility. If somebody has been violent and they claim to have changed, they must take responsibility, they must be accountable, and they must show patterns that they have changed. So Petnora, I would say that you're a cat with 9 lives. You found love again, and you seem like you're very happy with your current husband.
Extremely.
Yeah, so what about him is most interesting to you?
The fact that he loves the me he knows, not the me he heard about.
Okay.
The fact that he's concentrating on loving me and not anything not what has happened to me or what I love him so much.
He's not overly sympathetic of your past.
No, he doesn't even care. Sometimes, till date, I still talk to my ex-husband because of my kid. Okay. He doesn't even show concern. He's just carefree. You know, he's just that husband I wished for when I was in my previous.
How long have you been married to him now?
It's been 2 years now.
2 years?
2 years.
Okay.
And I have a beautiful daughter for him.
Whoa, you have a daughter for him?
Value.
Whoa, that's interesting.
And I named her Value because I realized that I needed to know my value to live where I was, to start a new life. So,
YOLO, tell us about a few projects that you've done with YOLO. At what stage is your project YOLO? What are your total plans? Where do you see this whole thing going to? Okay,
for YOLO, YOLO is a registered NGO.
Okay.
We've been running for over 1 year now. My first ever project was a school outreach. I visited over 12 schools around Delta State, where I taught them about effects of early marriage, which I felt affected my life too. Effects of early marriage and importance of education. Because so many people prioritize marriage
over education.
Yeah. It happened to me. I had to drop out because I was concentrating on the marital bliss and all of that. So I did a campaign against early marriage, and I taught over 12 schools about the importance of education. And then I have 3 students under my scholarship scheme. I think they will be graduating by next year. And I've done a school project for primary schools against bullying, and that was during the case of one Sylvester that was bullied in Lagos. I just felt that with the effect of bullying on kids and the whole thing they see their parents do at home, they might need to be worked on. So many of them take that abuse from their parents and take it to their schools.
To the marriage and even to the marriage. Yeah.
So I've done a campaign against bullying. I've done another, I've affiliated with some other financial institution to do, should I say a campaign, a program about saving, because that was also what affected my life. While I was in my ex's house, I didn't have plans of survival. I was just mainly surviving on him. You know, I had during the whole marriage process, I had shops, I had businesses, but the whole thing was going, I didn't have any backup plan, even any plan of helping him when he's down or starting my life when I am done. So I teach women about investment and proper planning. So, and I intend really doing so many things. I intend going to churches to teach women and, lecture them against domestic violence and preventive measures if possible.
Whoa, that's been a great story. Pet Nora, her journey through early marriage, abuse, divorce, and finding love, then her new project. I don't know what stage you are in your marriage. I don't know. Nobody prays to go through divorce or the whole abusive scenario. But don't be silent. If you're going through a hard time, talk to somebody. Now, this whole concept of we don't want to bring a third party into our marriage is not biblical, as the truth. It is not. The Bible gives very robust precedents. Number one, it says, let the older women teach the younger women to be good wives and to be responsible mothers. That's the third party. The Bible says if you have a problem with your neighbor, your husband, your wife inclusive, talk to them. If they agree, it's good. If they don't, call somebody else to talk to them. If they don't, tell the elders of the church. These are steps of crisis resolution. The Bible even says if the elders of the church talk to the erring party and they refuse, treat them like outcasts. Spouses inclusive. If your husband or your wife is abusive, unfaithful, cheating, and you've gone through all the stages to reconcile and get them to become sane and they are not, you can leave the marriage. You can leave the marriage. Mm-hmm. Because the covenant of life is superior to the covenant of marriage. You have to stay alive to stay married. But once again, there has to be those accountability steps, elders and people you have to talk to. So we don't have another casualty on our hands because you want to stay married.
We actually have a divorce lawyer now. If you're going through domestic violence and you think you're done, you don't know how to go about it because it was difficult for me to find my way around mine. So if you feel you're done with your marriage and you want to have a divorce, you have a divorce lawyer. I've actually processed one successfully on another one. And then if you need somebody to talk to too, you feel you need to share with somebody that would not judge you or would not misunderstand you, we are here too for you to talk to. So basically we have so many other women we are mentoring and helping to heal.
So as a final word, if you're going through problems, talk to somebody. We also have a list of certified or professional counselors, psychologists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists. Talk to somebody. Talk to a pastor, talk to a professional, talk to a medical service provider. Don't die in silence. So thank you for staying till the end of this episode on Dexter's Bridge Show. And don't forget to follow us on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the like button on this video and enable notification to know when new stories drop. And if you have a story or know somebody who does, please go to dextersbridge.com and drop your story. We want to hear from you. All that it is, we want to hear from you. And if you're wondering how you can be part of what we're doing, sponsorship or support, we're open to all that. Till next time, please keep living inspired lives.